Nobody has to tell Dr. Lisa Strohman that as a clinical psychologist and attorney. Dr. Strohman, welcome to the Brian Kilmeade Show.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, just to review, the president's now in his in the Beast, the limousine. He is now leaving Wright-Patterson Air Force Base into Dayton, Ohio. So, Doctor, how do we stop this, Dr. Strohman? Does this make any sense to you? First, let's break down El Paso. From what we know, this guy drives 11 hours, goes to a Walmart, gets something to eat, whips out a gun, and starts killing people, and then turns himself in when a cop cuts him off, gets out of his car, and just puts his hands up. How does he profile from what you know?
That is really not the typical profile of where you see one of these mass shooters where they really are committed to ending their own life in one of these situations. But I think that you have to, as a public, we want an answer specific to it, but we have to, as a public, recognize this wasn't something that this guy thought of in 10 minutes and irrationally went out and did that. He was rational. He was thoughtful. He planned it out. He had the weapons in part. He went out there to do the biggest shooting, and that's where I think, I'm frustrated because I've been doing this for 2 decades, that people don't recognize how contagious this is. People are studying ex-mass shooters, and they were looking for a way to put their name on the map. And that's what terrifies me about this El Paso shooter, is he didn't kill himself. He didn't put himself in front of any sort of law enforcement bullet. He turned himself in, so his name and his ability to move forward and be glorified for it is going to continue.
So you believe that this isn't a terrorist and this guy is not unhinged? Do you believe he's isolated, forgotten? Just ignored, and he doesn't want to be ignored anymore? I mean, we have not seen the debriefing. We have not seen him talk, but you can profile.
Right. I think that, working in the visiting scholar division or as a profiler in that visiting scholar at the profiling division, I've sat through a bunch of these. By no means am I a professional profiler, but I am going to say that when you look at these situations and you look at these cases, and I've been working in the system in schools with teachers, with families, with people for 20 years since Columbine. It's the whole reason why I went into the psychology of technology and how it impacts people. I've been doing this for 20 years. These people are left to their own devices, are feeling that they don't have a place to belong in society. They go online and they find a home. And whether it's with a fetish community or a white supremacist community or whether it's with political hatred, they are left to their own devices. They post, they read, they take in that information day in and day out without really any sort of interface with like humanity and compassion and interfacing with us as caring individuals back. That's what I see in these shooters that are going out and they're angry and they're shooting.
So when the president says social media and these video games, well, you become lost in that world, and in a way, you lose your ability to interact with the outside world. I just saw a study that said millennials, only 22% say they have a best friend, that most people feel totally isolated.
We have the highest rates of suicide in kids under the age of 18 in history. We have all of these millennials going in, and what I think that we started out with is thinking that social media was going to make us all super social has really created these silos of communities. And honestly, if you go into any campus across the U.S., even in the UK, even globally, if you go out and you look at a lunchroom with these kids, it starts there. They're not talking to each other. They're sitting in front of their device and they're posting and consuming things that are online, and they're not connecting. That's why they don't have friends. So there's really no ability. Why would you care about someone if you're going into a Walmart if you don't know how to connect to others? And that's what frustrates me. I'd love a seat with the president because he's asking the tech industry to come in and answer this. He's asking the video game producers to come in and answer that. Those are the wrong people to have at the table. Right? And the people that need to be at the table are the people that are actually in the weeds with these kids, seeing what's happening. And once we get that to happen, then I think that we can get some solutions on board. So
you believe the people that are dealing with the kids and analyzing, let's say a client of yours who came to see you because they felt isolated, you'd be somebody that would help solve this problem that's becoming an epidemic?
I could be. The issue is, if I put my legal hat on, because I'm not a typical just psychologist, if I put my legal hat on, people in my field who see clients and see kids, for instance, I had a kid that came in and I said, what are your issues? He was very disturbed, had circled homicidal. I said, who have you thought about killing? I haven't decided yet. My hands are tied as a professional. I have no ability to report that. I have no ability to do anything under ethical guidelines and professional guidelines and legal guidelines because there's not an identified target. So if you have, that's where legally we have to go in and we have to change the rules. And that's why the nuances of these red laws are so important to have appropriate people at the table, because this is more than a First Amendment right. Professionals that, like myself, who can identify and understand, I've got somebody who potentially could be the shooter in Ohio or professional to report that.
Yeah, we just lost you there for a second. So let's look at, this guy drives 12 hours and seems to be on a whim, decides to open up firing at a Walmart, killing people, and is still alive. Now, let's look at the Dayton shooter. He was a problem in 11th grade. He had a kill list and a rape list. We know that he told friends he wanted to shoot people that didn't give him big tips. We know that he had a girlfriend who said that when on their first date, he showed them video of the mass shooting of the of the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh. So this is a series of red flags. Does it sound familiar to you?
Absolutely familiar. The issue is, who do you report that to? Even if I'm seeing this kid as a professional, if he doesn't say, I'm going to go after Brian, and I know who Brian is, I can't report that. I need an identified target. If he just says, you know what, I'm going to go kill a bunch of people, there's nothing really under the law that we can do. And so we need to change that. That's the frustration with the wrong people are at the table. The video game industry is in it for money. They make billions of dollars. They're not going to come in and create a solution on this, and they're not, quite frankly, solely responsible for it. This kid needed help, and the parents obviously didn't know how to get it for him. The schools were probably trading him around, and the peers aren't educated on how to identify those warning signs and say, hey, we need to get some help for this kid. That's the problem, and for 2 decades I've been working on, nobody seems to want to come to the table and put resources at that level. That's what we need to be spending our time on. So
Dr. Lisa Strohman's here, a clinical psychologist, attorney, and FBI scholar. Dr. Strohman, so when people say there are things we do that are triggering these isolated individuals, usually young males, to act, are we doing something in general society where you and I aren't dangers? Is there something we're doing? Are public figures somehow triggering these fringe elements?
No, I mean, I think it's a bit ridiculous that we're taking a situation that is so tragic where people have lost lives and politicizing it. Look, this isn't a political issue. I think it's an issue about somebody wanting a platform to be able to say, I'm hurting, I'm angry, and here's what I'm going to do, because I've seen in the past that it's made a difference and people start to pay attention. They are just simply putting themselves on an elevated platform in the media so that they can send a message. I don't think that any of these shooters are going after and saying this actual political person is making me do this. I think that that's ridiculous, and I think that we're taking a platform in a political arena right now and trying to blame sides. That's not going to solve anything. It's not going to answer the question that these guys mostly are going after people that are vulnerable because they know that we're going to react as a society and that we're going to pay attention. We have to go to the etiology and the reason why, and we have to solve that, not start pointing fingers at people. Well,
do you see this getting worse as years go by? Do you think that people who are on the fringe see the attention that the shooters in Dayton and El Paso are getting and are more likely to act today than they would be before last weekend?
It's absolutely going to get worse. I mean, if you look at the amount of content online that is what I would call loosely radicalizing these guys and showing them that this is a good way to go through if you're going to make a message, and it starts back really when Klebold and Harris did it back in the day, and you've got 20-plus years where these guys are following it, there are certain forums and places where these guys can follow it. And then you have shows like 13 Reasons Why that is glorifying school shootings in Season 3. And I'm standing at the top of the mountain screaming and saying, look, we are causing this to happen over and over again because we're not paying attention to where these guys are. We don't have enough internet crimes officers out there to be able to manage it. Nobody's talking about that. I work with ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children units all over the nation. There are not enough days, hours, minutes in the world to address the amount of content out there that is a real threat. So we have to, as a society, stop looking at how do we blame a politician or how do we blame rhetoric and really go back and say, all right, how do we put resources towards finding what they're posting? And that's where I get really frustrated with the tech industry because they have the ability to do it. I know they do because I can look up a pair of boots and I get advertised for it for 2 weeks. You cannot tell me that same tech industry cannot identify and flag people that are looking up this kind of content and give us a heads up.
Yeah.
That's what's so frustrating.
That's a great point, and you're someone who knows this stuff. You know, they did a study. FBI examined 63 active shooters who opened fire between 2000 and 2013. All displayed some worrisome behaviors beforehand that people around them had noticed, offering expressions of desire to commit violence. But in most cases, people who saw these behaviors responded by talking to the person directly or doing nothing. That according to the study. How should we respond?
We have to have some sort of receptacle, whether it's mental health, law enforcement, or a task force in combination that specifically is created where we don't get all up in arms that we're creating a list or all that. It's about resources and getting people the help that they need. A general person in the public isn't going to know how to respond. So how do we get experts on board that say, hey, there's more flags on this case? How do we come together as a society and figure that out? It should not be that hard to create a safe and thoughtful and confidential way to address these people and get people the help that they need.
All right. Dr. Strohman, we've got to have you back. Sadly, we're going to need you back, but I also want to continue to reflect on this and stop this because everybody listening right now, Republicans and Democrats and in between, want to stop it. But you don't want to punish the wrong people, like law-abiding citizens who maybe want to have a gun and go hunting and make their life miserable, or have some spouse who wants to get back at their ex by saying he's dangerous and stopping him from having his own weapon or protection or shooting, go to a shooting range. So you just worry about people abusing the system.
Yeah, this is not a gun issue. You're absolutely right. And you're right. And I'm happy to come back and talk about it.
Dr. Lisa Strohman, thanks so much.
Yes, of course.
When we come back, Martha McCallum joins us, but most of all, you'll join us, 1-866-408-7669. The president's in Dayton. There are protesters there and more. We'll cover it all.